bang.
Here we go. The big bang. In this case,
Episode
it's not a theory.
180.
Wow. Is that
Bang.
updated? Is that correct, John? 180 episodes? I think that, yep. That ain't
180.
bad. That ain't bad.
That isn't bad. Yeah, I agree. Hey, folks, welcome to The Rebel's Edge. I'm John Najarian. He is Pete Najarian, and Jared is handling, I guess today, the snowboarding bear, or which bear is, or the bear. The bear's going to be kicking the bull's butt or something like that. I don't know, because there
it is,
snowboarding bear. Because of course Jared handles the clocks, the time and date, and the topics that you see on the right side of your screens. So, hey Pete, let's dive right in. It's Flag Day as well as Fed Day. I'll be joining Liz Clayman at 3:00 Eastern time today. Just because you can't get enough smart redheaded people on TV, and Liz definitely fits both of those categories, smart and redheaded.
That's true.
So let's talk, Pete, a little macro minute. And it's all about what the Fed's going to do. I've already got a couple of people taking me up on Twitter. They want to bet, Pete, that the Fed's going to raise rates this time. And I'm betting that they're going to pause. What say you?
Well, I'm seeing the exact same thing, John. That you stole my thunder there, because I'm looking at the macro picture as well, and it's Fed Day, which I want to say right now to Jared. Hey, Jared, on Fed Day from here on out, I think we actually get like a Powell doing something. Maybe he's fighting either a bear or a bull or something. That would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
All that being said, John, it's 75% chance that they're going to pause. We all know that, but the 25% crowd is very vocal. And I'm hearing it from everybody, and everybody that I've talked to today has said to me, hey, I think they're going to raise by a quarter. So, it's amazing, because I don't know that we've seen that disparity when we've had such a great grand size group that's saying it's going to pause. CME is saying it's going to pause. And yet there's a lot out there that are saying, you know what, quarter point's coming. So it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, and what I'm going to tell Liz, I think, Pete, is that, again, if they're data-driven, they can surely pause. The question is, since inflation pressures, even the PPI today, coming in lighter than expected, that should tell you that pausing, no way they're going to get down to 2% anytime soon.
Right.
That's their goal for inflation. It's full employment and 2% inflation. They're not going to get there for months and months. So why accelerate the pain by basically raising rates right now, especially when you can wait? That's my take. Yep. All right, let's talk about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well done.
Fantastic futures. I'm going to say, Pete, watch Bitcoin, because 75%, like you've said, are expecting a pause. If the 25% are right, Bitcoin will break. It will sell down. Why? Because as an alternative to cash and getting money in T-bills or anything else, it loses when the rates go up, but it wins if we're flat. And that's why I expect Bitcoin to rally after this, Pete.
All right, my futures is this, John, something we rarely talk about here, but sugar. We're talking about futures and so forth, and that's one of them for sure. Well, how about this? Early January, we were under 19, and then by April, we were around 20, and then we traded all the way up to 27, and now here we are at 25.50. It's up a little bit today, but here's the big thing. It's at 11-year highs, so be aware of this. It's a combination of demand and some of the weather conditions combined, starting to push this thing to the upside, but it's been a very violent move. If you take a look year to date, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Sugar, keep an eye on this thing. This is it's not the biggest thing in the world. It's not like crude and everything else, but it certainly is something worth monitoring for sure.
And we will. I will keep an eye on it, closer eye on it as well, Pete. Mm-hmm. Corn syrup and sugar. Yeah. All right. What about SOFI? Pete and I were in wine country last week, and we had unusual activity two hits in a row, actually, Pete. At first, they bought the 950 calls in SoFi, and then they bought the $9 calls. And we said, hey, there's a big short interest in here. And they bought 29,000 of the 950 calls. So take a look at that, folks. Those are the hits as far as, some of those buys that we saw. And then the stock rocketed to the upside. And those calls went, another, I hate to say it, Pete, but
I don't think you hate to say it.
I love to say it.
Yeah.
What do you think of SoFi here, Pete?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, John. I've had great opportunity because of the unusual option activity that we have seen has helped drag me back in there. Now, this is a stock that ran to 52-week highs. Outside of that, John, it's still half of what it was for all-time highs since it came out. Was a $20 stock. It's run up to $10. It's been a really nice run for all the right reasons as well. When you look at the company itself, the financial services and lending and everything that they do, they talked about going into the future, John, looking at their revenue of a growth of 32 to 35% year over year. So I'm just going back and just looking through everything that's going into why is it getting here the way it is? It's improving rapidly on the net losses as well. So as they've gotten a little bit better and a little bit better, I think people are standing up and realizing, hey, this company actually does have a shot. I love what we're seeing here. I still own some, so I'm a little bit biased. But I will be very disciplined if this thing starts to crack through that next level. And I'd probably shoot for about 12, I think, before I'd start trimming anymore.
Yeah. And keep in mind, folks, that the calls they were buying expire, I think, Pete, the 30th of June.
Yep.
So you've got 2 more weeks, basically, to play it, those of you who want to. I rolled up, Pete. So I rolled up from the 9s to the 950s and then to the 10s. We'll see if it starts pulling back. It's pulled back a little already, but the demand for those calls is still quite high. So I think we could see some of those higher numbers. And I know Liz Young, our friend from SoFi, is probably rooting for it too.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Humana. It was down 12% like that. And the reason wasn't Humana. It was the CFO, Chief Financial Officer of United Health. He was out there saying, hey, demand for seniors surgeries has picked up dramatically. And the cost of those is likewise picking up dramatically. A lot of people, Pete, couldn't get this stuff done during COVID for a whole host of reasons. Either they were scared or the hospitals weren't doing those elective surgeries and so forth. And they're going in now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, John, take a look at this company and then you tell me, is this time to sell it? Or maybe on a dip like this, down 10, 12, 13%, whatever it is, to maybe buy it. And here's why. When you look at the structure of the company itself, the balance sheet trades at an 18 PE. You don't hear that very often anymore, but that's a very, very low number, which is very attractive. 16 billion in cash over debt. And the free cash flow, it's only $10 billion, John. There's also, the effect of what we're seeing in the medical device area where they're absolutely rocketing today. Why? Well, because their demand just picked up because of all of this. I think this is a great opportunity on some great stocks that are getting hit pretty hard today. United Health and Humana getting hit even harder. I think this is a great opportunity to say, you know what? Maybe at these levels on a little bit of a discount, maybe this is a great opportunity because, John, they'll get through all of this, and then you've still got the great balance sheet. You still got a great company. You've got all the margin that they get and everything else. I like this as an opportunity here to buy something that's getting pulled back and hit maybe a little bit for the wrong reasons. I understand why it's getting hit, but it probably overshot to the downside.
I agree. And I don't think that any country could have imagined how much these carriers can make on the money that they get, Pete.
Yeah.
Like you say, 10 billion free cash flow. I mean, that's an amazing number, nearly $1 billion a month or whatever. It's just off the charts. Anyway, let's talk, Pete, about AMD. Speaking of off the charts, because this one, likewise, we had great upside call buying in advanced micro devices. We talked about that one on Friday to the assembled over in wine country that we had for the 2-day live trading expo. And I know a lot of them were really, really happy about this, Pete, because from Friday when it was trading, I think it closed at 124 or so on Friday. Yesterday, it hit a high of 133.
Not bad.
So yeah, and it's held on to a lot of that. I mean, it pulled back, but again, you have to be disciplined. Some of these calls were out there in the July timeframe, so you had a lot of time to be right with those calls. But I would say overall, Pete, that the news today was pretty damn strong. Amazon basically saying that they're thinking about using the AMD MI3000 AI chip. That's a lot to say, but that's what they're thinking about. And that's really good for them. And they don't want the NVIDIA chip, Pete.
Right. By the way, do you got any kind of BOGO going on this son of a gun, or what do we got going here?
We do, and we will. I'm going to tape a SOFI one for today. Maybe I'll do the AMD tomorrow.
All right.
It might be surging through 130 again tomorrow, Pete.
Well, and I'll tell you this, John, the analysts have all raised their price targets up to about an average of about 145. So they don't think it's over. They think there's a little bit of room still to the upside. I think the storyline that I walk away from on this one for today, at least on AMD, and there's stories every day on NVIDIA and AMD and a lot of these various semiconductor companies and so forth. But what I see in AMD today is whenever AWS, whenever Amazon's banging on your door, you want to answer that door and you want to deliver. And if they can deliver, John, that could be a monster move for AMD that brings them that much higher, because conversations are great. But if they can ink a deal, that's going to be even better, and it's going to be incredible. And it sounds to me like you might disagree or you might agree. It sounds to me like Amazon wants to do a deal with AMD rather than with NVIDIA. So I think the chips are stacking up pretty nice for AMD right now.
Yeah. And having a competitive product is good for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Having a product where it's not just NVIDIA, it's AMD. And I'm sure Amazon understands that, because if everybody just piles onto NVIDIA and the chips are this close to being the same sort of thing, they can have a little more input into the customization perhaps of this AI chip, Pete. Right. Whereas NVIDIA would probably, I hate to say it, NVIDIA, but you'd probably bend them over. But by the way, we did have unusual activity in NVIDIA yesterday too, Pete. And that one, boom, through 423 today. Again. Bang. All right. Let's talk for a sec, Pete, about Logitech. It is never a good bit of news when you hear that, oh, by the way, the CEO and the president are both gone effective immediately. So what does that tell you? That tells you there's a boardroom fight going on. It tells you something ain't right in Denmark, or in this case, Switzerland, because that's where they're based, Pete. But something's rotten in Denmark and Switzerland, apparently, with Logitech, and that's why people are hitting the exits.
Well, I'll tell you what's rotten in Denmark, or wherever you want to go, in Logitech. How about the fact that their revenues were down 21.9% year over year? Their earnings were down. Everything looks pretty crappy on the front right now for Logitech. Their stock is trading half of what it was back in June of 2021. So it had that big, powerful move up, John, during the pandemic period, so to speak. And then it's fallen right back down once again. So I look at it, they had 6 times normal volume in the first 2 hours, 2.5 hours of the day. So it's a lot of changeover. But to your point, when a CEO says, I'm out virtually immediately, and the president, that's a problem. There's a lot going on behind the scenes here. This is one of those where you'd have to say, you know what, until they can clear this thing up, I don't think this is somewhere where I want to be. I think there are better choices out there than this right now.
And this one's very similar in many ways, Pete, to DocuSign or Zoom, because this was a pandemic play.
Yeah.
Why do we say that? You guys know why. Because so many of us bought new peripherals. That's what they sell. Mice, wireless keyboards, and the like. So that was tremendous during COVID and the lockdowns. Just back to regular business now. And maybe they even, what did they call it, Pete? Dialed some of that demand into that time frame rather than it just percolating along. So I would stay away from this one for a bit longer, I think. All right, Pete, tell us about how your Florida Panthers just whipped up on those Vegas Golden Knights for the Stanley Cup.
Well, I can tell you this: it didn't quite happen the way at least I was hoping for. But I don't say that as a guy who's against the Knights. I think that this is an unbelievable story for the Knights as well. I mean, John, think about this. This is a squad that's only been around for 5 seasons. This is their second Stanley Cup. This one they won, and it was incredible. It was dominating. Florida finally kind of just folded up a little bit compared to what they did. Let's not forget, Florida was the 8th team, right? When you're looking at seeds, and they had to go against the biggest and baddest of them all, at least in the East, and they took down a team that set an NHL record, John, with the Boston Bruins. So they did a lot of things right. They did it along the way, and eventually it finally kind of caught up with them because the Knights were just too much. The Knights actually put up 9 goals last night. That's, I think, very close to a record, if it's not a record as well. Aiden Hill, the goalie, was great during the regular season, but he was even better in the postseason. His numbers got even better, John. He was only giving up about 2 goals per game. And with the scoring power that this team has, matter of fact, one of the guys last night, how about getting a hat trick in game 5 to put your team into and win the Stanley Cup? I mean, there was a lot of good things going on, and I loved it. I mean, it's no Camelot, but Las Vegas is certainly a place where people were pretty excited. How about the fans? 19,000 folks are going into that stadium, John, and just like with Denver the other night, who had never won since 1955 or whatever. I mean, these fans were going out of their minds, and it was just congratulations to everybody. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it probably in both cases played out probably the way we would expect when you're going up against an 8 seed, that the dominating team usually does come out. You're always kind of pulling for the underdog, but it wasn't here to happen. But I'll tell you this, the Knights are something special, John. And again, how about this? Las Vegas has got the Knights, they got the Raiders, and Oakland's got a deal starting to work up again now to get that baseball stadium built so the A's can leave where they are in that hole that they play in to go to Las Vegas. That's not too far away.
No. And Pete, as great as the players are, and the hats off to them, because the players are the ones that do it on the ice in this case, or on the court in the case of your Nuggets. But Bill Foley, Pete, I looked him up because he's the owner of the Golden Knights. And he has something called, I think, Black Knight Financial Services. Now, that's not a big surprise. He took a look at the Jaguars. He almost bought the Jacksonville Jaguars. Price went too high. He ended up buying the team that became the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And Pete, this guy is a former Fidelity guy. Yeah, he's a lawyer and so forth, but he was with Fidelity National Financial, which is, by the way, a similar sort of pedigree to the guy that owns the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
So now you got two guys with ties formerly to Fidelity, and they're both winning Stanley Cups. So maybe it says a little bit about the discipline that some of those folks at Fidelity have, because they grew that behemoth into one of the largest money management companies on earth. And they've put out a lot of pretty successful alumni, I'd say, Pete. So hats off to you, Bill Foley. That's a great job, sir.
Yeah, it's impressive, John. It's impressive because I know they had advantages. I mean, the one thing that I know for a fact, when you go into the NHL and when they did start to expand, they got a lot more of an opportunity than folks in the past. It's the right way to do it. So maybe the NFL and all the other sports, if they decide to ever expand more, and I think at some point they may, John, it's why they're always playing football in Europe. But at some point in time, maybe there'll be a team in London. How do you get it started? How do you give them an opportunity to be competitive as fast as you can? That's what the NHL did a great job with the Knights themselves, and they did an absolutely amazing job. And the Kraken, for that matter, as well, up in Seattle, have done a great job. So NHL, salute you. Speaking of which, How about we go over to a little bit of golf, John? There's a conversation you could have literally almost every single day because of this LIV thing and everybody's opinions on that and whether or not it's okay that they're part of the PGA. PGA's bringing them in and everything. By the way, Jay Monahan, you don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but how about the fact that this guy, John, his health is suddenly not so good. I'm going to say there's a hell of a lot of pressure in this guy's life. I don't know what it is that he's got going on, but it's not good right now from a health perspective. So prayers out to him. But if you're Rory McIlroy, you're probably not sending a really big prayer out there to him because he's still pretty ticked off. And by the way, they got the U.S. Open on Thursday. Do you know who Rory's teamed up with? Brooks Koepka, one of the guys who jumped LIV, made a boatload of money, and he has not been happy about any of this. He's not happy about the announcement. He was not happy about all these guys leaving. And, you know, you can understand there are certain things that we all can see with this going on in golf right now. But I'll tell you what, he has a very strong opinion on this, John, and he said they aren't welcome. Rory came out very openly. So it might be a pretty interesting round on Thursday. I think we should that might be must-watch TV, is to watch how do they work together while they're playing in this first round. And it could be pretty interesting because they don't like each other. They don't like each other's politics or opinions or anything else. And, you know, Rory and some of the other guys, John Rahm is really ticked off still. So there's not exactly like this is setting up to be, hey, great to see you, great to be back, and all the rest of this. I think the U.S. Open might even see a fist fight or two.
Well, I'll take the other side of that bet.
Me too. Me too.
Because like that Saturday Night Live skit said, Pete, well, this isn't a sport. Well, why not? Because you should watch that rather than have me read off the whole thing. But that was just a phenomenal SNL about golf, Tiger Woods, even a little Michael Jordan thrown in there for those of you who remember the skit. But Pete, I'll say Tiger Woods and Rory were both very critical of this. They both thought that, you know, people turned their back on what got them to, you know, the point in their careers where they were making, you know, the top echelon, making tens of millions of dollars a year. And instead, people that maybe hadn't won a bunch of open titles were getting 50 million just for coming over to play in the live tournaments. Mm-hmm. So obviously there is some regret on the part of some of the folks that didn't take the money. Even if they say there is not, I believe there is, because how could you walk away from that much money and not have some regret? And they can talk all they want, Pete, about, for instance, oh, this is a Saudi-backed league. This is a, you know, the live that's going to be merging if everything goes through with PGA. It does put the PGA in a better financial situation, and it will move up the prize packages that these golfers will be getting. But to all of those guys who really want to push back against Saudi, and I'm not saying they're wrong to do it, Pete, but just take a look at where your shoes are made. Take a look at where a lot of the sporting equipment is coming from. And you really like China that much? You know, the NBA loves China. So, you know, one coach comes out and says a little bit against China, and the whole league blows up and starts throwing their support behind China. So I think money talks and BS walks, Pete. And a lot of these guys got to get used to the idea that it isn't a perfect world. And if they want to play in one that is, you probably don't want to take the PGA's money either.
Yeah, the interesting thing too, John, is even before this happened, all of a sudden the purses went up pretty substantially from the PGA to kind of compete against the LIV. Well, where'd that money come from? I mean, you know, where was that money before? So there is some good arguments about some of this kind of stuff, but it's going to be interesting. I think it truly will be must-watch TV, especially Thursday, just because of the matchups, and then we'll see as it goes on, you know, how things progress. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think as viewers, and I'll bet you this. I'll bet you this Thursday's viewership will be higher than it's been for a very long time. I'm not talking Saturday, Sunday. I'm talking Thursday and potentially Saturday, Sunday, depending on who's getting up towards the top, and who they're teamed up with could be pretty interesting.
Yep. Well, folks, we appreciate you joining us. Please send us some comments. My DMs are open. And I'll remind you also that if you'd like to get a BOGO, as Pete said, that's a buy one, get one free. If you go to marketrebellion.com/bang, which is my favorite expression, bang, marketrebellion.com/bang, you get 2 months for the price of one, which is, as you know, known as a BOGO, buy one, get one. So if you'd like to follow along with some of the trades like SOFI and AMD that we've discussed today, or Beyond Meat yesterday, or any of the nice trades that we're lucky enough to put out there to our subscribers, by all means, check out marketrebellion.com/bang, and we'll see you tomorrow.